Hello, gents. Why don't you just sit right back because I have a messed up and crazy story to share with you today. At the end of World War II, America had a very uneasy alliance with Russia. The only thing the US and Russia had in common during the war was both wanted to stop Nazi Germany. But America and Russia's relationship was never great and it was about to get worse. Throw into that mix hundreds of highly advanced German scientists, chemists, engineers, and doctors. Their knowledge was extremely valuable. They were far more advanced than the US and Russia in rocket propulsion, high-altitude flight testing, chemical weapons, and nuclear weapons development. To Russia and America, it suddenly became a contest of who could obtain the most knowledge the quickest. For American leadership, the question was simple. Do we spend several years and millions of dollars developing weapons and science to try to catch up, while Russia pillages the German knowledge that's ripe for the picking? Or do we overlook the enormous ethical implications and start taking the monsters under our wings who hold the keys to our success? The choice was made and the race was on. The USA began bringing them in a highly classified program known as Operation Paperclip. While war crime trials were proceeding in Nuremberg, German scientists and doctors were being executed for their murders, so US operatives had to work fast. If their knowledge was valuable enough, their trials were manipulated in order to allow them to be acquitted and come to work for America. Others had their identities concealed because their crimes were so egregious. Now, it would be really nice to be able to say most of them were just good scientists living in a bad environment. And while that was true in many cases, unfortunately several of them were ardent Nazis, and when their histories are examined, it's clear they were plain evil. There's just no way around it. Among the Paperclip scientists were committed Nazi Party members, SS leaders, stormtroopers, and Golden Party badge recipients. Several of them worked closely with Hitler himself and even received personal prizes and rewards from the Fuhrer. Among their atrocities were things like running slave labor camps, starving, beating, and hanging slave laborers in V-2 rocket factories. They conducted a variety of torturous and lethal human experiments. They tested humans in high-pressure tanks, drowned people in ice baths, tested nerve agents on them, carried out starvation tests, forced saltwater drinking tests, and performed experimental surgeries on healthy prisoners to test the effects. But if they held enough valuable knowledge, these fiends had their past wiped clean to come to America and secretly work for Uncle Sam for the betterment of national security. Don't forget Russia was running a similar operation of their own, only they kidnapped scientists for their program. Some of the highest-ranking military generals and most valuable scientists were given cushy living conditions in Russia, but many more lived in bad circumstances. The U.S. offered lucrative military contracts for their scientists. Most of them were allowed to bring their families to the U.S. In general, the Paperclip scientists were treated much better than their counterparts in Russia. One big part of Operation Paperclip was transitioning them into becoming Americans. Prisoners held in custody needed their status quietly changed from war criminals to immigrants with visas. This was done through a lot of complicated back-channel secrecy. Because the fear of the communist machine in Russia was greater than the disdain for Nazi war criminals, over 1,600 of them came to the U.S., and most of them became U.S. citizens. Operation Paperclip started very small, with strict criteria for who could be let in and who was considered too undesirable. But what started as a very limited program grew into a huge operation as fear of Russian advancement grew. Soon there were no checks and no balances. As the program accelerated, there was no such thing as too evil to get in. As long as they possessed useful knowledge that could contribute to the building up of U.S. military superiority, their crimes could be overlooked. Here are just a couple bios on a few of the men who became U.S. citizens under Paperclip. Their stories are much too complex to summarize in just a few minutes, so if you want to learn more, do your own research. I'll show you how in just a minute. Walter Schreiber was a high-ranking Nazi and Germany's military surgeon general. His crimes were extreme and monstrous. He committed and oversaw sadistic experiments in prison camps in the name of advancing medical science. After the war, he was first taken by Russia and served 3 years in prison before they realized his true identity and started exploiting his knowledge. He somehow escaped and defected to America to become a paperclip doctor. Unbeknownst to the CIA, but knownst to us now, he was actually a Russian spy and his escape from Russia was planned. In 1951, while happily living in San Antonio, the Boston Globe found out about him working in the U.S. and reported it, along with the details of his sordid past. His career in the U.S. quickly ended and the U.S. government moved him to Argentina to live out the rest of his life. It wasn't discovered until later that he was double-crossing America all along and had pulled the wool over the U.S. intelligence's eyes as a Soviet mole. To this day, it's unknown for sure, but believed that he was actually double-crossing both the U.S. and Russia and was profiting from his secret deals with both of them. Of all the former Nazis in Operation Paperclip, Wernher von Braun is probably the most well-known and controversial of them all. He was a rocket lover from a young age, and his life's work was the advancement of rocketry and space exploration. Both in Nazi Germany and in America, he worked tirelessly on his passion. He met Hitler on multiple occasions. Here he's seen posing with Hitler and some of his worst officers. He was a decorated member of the SS, but as evidenced in most photos, he preferred to wear a suit instead of the Nazi uniform. Here's one of the only photos in existence of him in his SS uniform, and he's mostly obscured, almost as if he's hiding from history. He designed the V-2 rocket, the world's first long-range ballistic missile which terrorized Paris, London, Antwerp, and other targets during World War II. The V-2 was mass-produced in slave labor camps, and that production was overseen by von Braun. Many thousands of laborers died while working in horrific conditions on V-2 production. To avoid being captured by the Soviets, he surrendered to the U.S. He first worked in Fort Bliss, Texas, and later in Huntsville, Alabama. He continued his work in rocketry and space exploration. He worked on many important projects over the years. He drank a lot of Coke. He oversaw the Saturn V rocket, which propelled men to the moon in 1969. He was eventually hailed as a hero of modern space exploration. He partnered with Walt Disney on a space exploration television series. He met President Kennedy. He continually downplayed his Nazi past, and who could blame him? He successfully convinced America he was a reluctant Nazi, and maybe he was. But his past caught up to him, and many elements of his past he would have preferred to stay secret got out. By all accounts, he was a faithful Nazi during the war, but being an unfaithful Nazi meant arrest and possible execution, so it's no surprise he towed the line. In the end, von Braun accomplished a lot of amazing things. He was no doubt an American treasure, but his link to horrible war crimes will forever tarnish his reputation. Now, if you want to learn more about Operation Paperclip, may I recommend this book, Operation Paperclip, The Secret Intelligence Program That Brought Nazi Scientists to America by Annie Jacobsen. I've read the crap out of this book in my research for this video. Through declassified documents and tireless research, the author has brought to light a lot of dirty secrets. And the dirtier the secret, the harder it is to get unburied. There is more paperclip-related declassification happening now, and probably much more that never will be declassified. In this book, you'll find fascinating details about the operation, as well as the bios and secret histories of several more paperclip scientists, such as Otto Ambros, Hermann Becker-Freyseng, Walter Dornberger, Arthur Rudolph, George Ricke, Kurt Debus, Friedrich Hoffmann, Hubertus Strughold, Kurt Blome, Theodore Benzinger, and many others. As you learn about some of the unspeakable crimes these guys committed, the well-paying U.S. military contracts they received, the contributions they made to U.S. military advancement, and the honors they received while their pasts were shrouded in secrecy, you'll find yourself conflicted at times, pissed off at times, and filled with unexpected compassion at other times. Aligning with these unsavory characters was like selling your soul to the devil. Was it worth it? Well, the Cold War with Russia never became a hot war, and much of that is attributed to Operation Paperclip. But at what cost? Thanks for watching, gents. See you soon. Now, on a side note, one of Germany's most famous scientists, Albert Einstein, left Germany when Hitler took over. He became an American citizen the legitimate way. He had no compassion for the paperclip scientists, and he called upon President Truman to cancel Operation Paperclip. He stated emphatically that anyone who served under Hitler was unfit for U.S. citizenship.